just really ended up liking this one. Wow, how the tables have turned. The book was just so boring. Hey friends, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby. Today we're going to be starting on another reading vlog, specifically where I read some new thriller and horror book releases, because there have been so many exciting thriller and horror books publishing recently that I cannot wait to read. One of the books I'll be reading in today's video includes You Know What You Did. This one's a recently published thriller, and this one is a debut thriller, and it says it's about a first-generation Vietnamese American artist who must confront nightmares past and present. But this is one I've been very curious and excited to read, and my friend Kayla over from Books and Lala, she actually has this book as her June book club pick for the Literally Dead book club, so I knew that I wanted to get to this sooner rather than later, so this will be the first thing I read in this vlog. I'm also going to be reading Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose in this vlog, which I know maybe this sounds like a bad idea because so far everything that I've read from Geneva Rose I haven't really loved, and it had almost gotten to the point where I was like ready to swear off this author for good and just be like, yeah, she's not for me. I don't think I'm gonna read anything she comes out with. This one in particular, it really intrigues me. I mean, not only is the cover one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen, but then also the premise for this one just sounds really interesting. It looks like it's a horror novel, but I think this one's actually more of just a mystery thriller. And this one involves these like siblings who are going back home after their mom has died, and they're like uncovering secrets from their past. And this one, Libro actually had this as one of their like Libro ALCs, so I have access to this one on audio from Libro, so I was like, why not? Let's just give it a go. Let's give Geneva Rose one more chance in this video. Why not? So I'm gonna be reading that one, and then I'm also gonna be reading The House That Horror Built by Christina Henry. And this is another audiobook that I'm going to be listening to for this video. I got this audio from my library, and this one is a horror book that I'm really excited about because Christina Henry is the same author as Near the Bone, which is like one of my favorite horror books of all time. And this one sounds especially interesting to me because we're following from the perspective of this character who's going to be working for this horror movie director. I feel like it's really common lately in publishing. Like I've been seeing a lot of books coming out recently that have like a horror movie element to them, and this one is no different, so I'm really looking forward to this. And then the last book that I'm going to be reading for this video is A Talent for Murder by Peter Swanson, because this is the most recently published book from Peter Swanson. This one actually does publish in the month of June. I got my copy from Book of the Month, and this is one that I could not be more excited about. It's definitely one of my most anticipated books of the year, because if you didn't know, this book, A Talent for Murder, it's technically the third book in the Kind Worth Killing series. So we have The Kind Worth Killing, which is the first book, which is one of my all-time favorite books, 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. And then we have The Kind Worth Saving, which came out like last year or the year before, and that one I also gave 5 stars, and I thought I loved it just as much as the original. And so this one being like the third book in that series, I do think this one could be read as a standalone from what I've heard, but I think books like this are much more impactful when like you know the story from the other books and you're familiar with some of these characters already. In this story, all I know about it is it says a newlywed librarian begins to suspect that the man she married is a murderer. And so it should be a fun time, you know, like I really loved the first 2 books in this series. They were both 5 stars for me, so going into this, I have some very high expectations. So those are the 4 books that I'm planning to read for today's video. Before we do jump into the vlog, I just wanted to take a second to thank today's video sponsor, which is Factor, because Factor makes meeting your nutrition goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian approved meals right to your doorstep. They have a whole team of gourmet chefs who create these meals using only ingredients with integrity so that you can be feeling your best all day long. I know for me, I feel like the summertime can get so busy and it can be so hard to try to meal plan, especially in the summer, and that's where I think Factor really comes in and makes your life so much easier because you can choose from a weekly menu of 35 options. The convenience of having them delivered right to your door is incredible because you don't have to go out grocery shopping, they just come right to you. And then the fact that these meals are already made, ready to go, you just put them in the microwave for 2 minutes, and then you have a really good, nutritious meal ready to go. You don't have to do all the preparation that it takes to cook, and you don't have to worry about the cleanup either. It really is such a time saver, especially on nights where I just really don't feel like cooking. And so you can skip the overpriced takeout trap because let's be real, takeout is so expensive. I feel like especially this year, I've noticed takeout is getting more expensive than ever, and Factor is a cheaper and more affordable option, and the food tastes so good. Really love the flexibility of being able to change your meals from week to week. You can get 4 to 18 meals per week. You can also put them on pause if you're gonna be out of town. I just really appreciate how flexible Factor is with the schedule. I especially love the chicken dishes that Factor comes out with. My favorite is the sun-dried tomato chicken dish. Like that is one of my absolute favorites from Factor. It is such a staple in my life. And if you didn't know, Factor is now owned by HelloFresh. And so with a wide variety of meal plans to choose from, there really is something for everyone. I love using both brands personally. I really love getting meals from Factor and HelloFresh, and now you can as well at a discount with me. So you can head head to factor75.com, or you can click the link down below and use my code gabbyreads50 to get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off the next month. That's code gabbyreads50 at factor75.com to get 50% off your first box and then 20% off the next month of orders. That is such an incredible deal, so thank you so much to Factor for sponsoring today's video. And now let's get to the reading vlog. Hello, hi, I am here with the first update for this vlog because I've been reading You Know What You Did. I just had a really great weekend with my friend Brittany. She came over to stay for like 2 nights. We were going out to coffee shops and like reading over the weekend, so while I was in those coffee shops, I was able to get 142 pages into this, and so far it's been going okay. I feel like this is definitely one of those thrillers that is quite the slow burn, which is something that I'm okay with, but I feel like I have to be in a very specific mood for a kind of book like this. So in this story, we're following this character named Annie, and she is a Vietnamese American woman, and right at the start of this book, her mother dies suddenly, and then it kind of sends her into this tailspin where like her OCD starts to come back very strongly. I don't personally have OCD, so like I can't speak on the representation that's in this book, but from what I've heard from a lot of reviewers who do have OCD, I've heard that it's very accurate representation, at least for some people. I know like not everybody has the same experience with OCD, but so far it seems like a lot of the mystery in this book is revolving around like something that happened in her past, because she keeps having these flashbacks of her mom saying, "You know what you did," and she keeps having these flashbacks in her head. Like anytime something is happening to her, she'll think like, oh my god, like tires crunching and like something smashing into the windshield. Like it seems like something happened in the past that she keeps thinking about now, and then she keeps having these like visions for things that she thinks are happening but they're not actually happening. Like she'll space out for a few minutes and it's like she'll imagine something happening that's not actually real. So it's almost like one of those stories where you don't really even know if you can trust the protagonist, like the point of view that you're reading from. And so that's been pretty interesting so far. We also are getting a really interesting like mother-daughter relationship happening in this book. I noticed that the dedication for this book, it says dedicated to mothers, daughters, and the daughters who mother. And I feel like that's a really interesting dedication because it does seem like because this protagonist is struggling so much with her OCD and like all these visions and like blacking out, it seems like her daughter is taking on the roles sometimes of like taking care of her own mother. And it seems like they have a really complicated relationship because of this. Like their relationship just feels very strained because the daughter, like it seems like the daughter is a lot closer to her dad, or like she really like looks up to her dad, and then like her and her mom just have this kind of like toxic relationship. And I think it's also because, you know, since she kind of has this mindset of like a traditional like Vietnamese American household where she like expects certain things from her daughter, and she'll like make comments all the time about how she's like dressing like a hoe or like, you know, being inappropriate because that's what she's always heard from her own mother. It's like these traditional ideas just get passed down from one generation to the next, and her daughter is just like, she's had enough of it. Like it just seems like they have a really toxic relationship because of those expectations. And her daughter's like 14 or 15 years old, you know, so she's like an early young teen. And so like their relationship and their dynamic has been really interesting, and it's also exploring, you know, like this character Annie and her dynamic with her mother who had passed away. So like we're getting a lot of really interesting mother-daughter stories happening in this so far. I think the plan for today is trying to listen to this on audio and seeing if I could finish it up today. I mean, I'm only about 40% of the way through right now, but I don't have too much going on today. I mean, Brittany like literally just left, so I'm gonna be doing some laundry and just kind of like cleaning up around the apartment. And then later tonight, I'm actually gonna be going over to my parents for like a little Memorial Day barbecue kind of situation, so that's gonna be happening this afternoon. But I feel like I have a couple of hours to kill before the barbecue, so hopefully I can finish this one up today. I am back with an update because I have finished reading You Know What You Did. Earlier today, I went over to my parents' house and we had a nice little Memorial Day barbecue. I had a burger, it was great. My mom told me to like wear my Summerween shirt over to the house so that we could take pictures together in the merch, and like they turned out so cute. And then look at this shirt that I'm wearing. It's Right People, Wrong Person, and it's merch that my friend Brittany just gave me for RM's new album. Isn't it so cute? Oh my god. So it was a great night, but I wanted to let you know that before I left for dinner, I actually did end up finishing You Know What You Did. The first half for me was really interesting. It was really intriguing. You know, I really do love a thriller like this where mother-daughter relationships specifically are explored, especially when, you know, the mother-daughter relationships can be very toxic. But I also feel like, I don't know, in the second half of this book, I really feel like the story started to drag for me. There were a lot of scenes in this book that had flashbacks. Like we would get flashbacks to like this character's childhood and like her growing up with her own mother. I feel like even though, you know, this book was kind of like slow in the first half of it, I feel like it was really doing a good job at like building the suspense for me. Like I liked getting all of those creepy flashbacks or like the creepy scenes where she's like seeing things and it's like, you know what you did. It was very intriguing at the beginning. Then I feel like as we got to the end of this book, especially in the last like 30 to 40% of this book, the suspense definitely picked up, but for some reason I just didn't care as much about what was happening. And there was also like, I don't know, the ending for this didn't really work for me because I feel like the ending was just too cheesy for like the tone of this book. Because I feel like most of this book had a very like almost like literary fiction style of writing to it where it very much felt more like a character study than like a typical like mystery thriller, and I was liking those elements about it, but I feel like along the way I just started to lose interest, I guess, in what was going on, and the writing also started to feel more like a typical mystery thriller, but like it wasn't as shocking or interesting anymore. Like I actually thought the ending was really predictable and it just didn't match the tone of like the rest of the book for me, I guess. I don't know what I'm trying to say. I guess I just felt a real disconnect with like the second half of this book. Like rating wise, that's why I'm kind of torn on how I want to rate this, but I feel like it's probably gonna end up being like 2.5 stars for me because this book was just so forgettable. Like I think that's the main thing for me, is that I know like within a week or two I'm gonna forget most of the plot points of this book. It's just a forgettable book overall, which is unfortunate, but I do think the strongest thing about this book for me was the OCD representation. And I'm sure, like, you know, like I said earlier, like I don't have OCD, so I can't really speak on this for sure, but it does feel like a book that really did this service. Like it feels like it was well done. And like the talk about the OCD was so detailed and so specific that I feel like if you do have OCD, this might actually be a little bit triggering to read just because it really gets into like the details of that. And I found it to be really interesting, to be honest, and I feel like it helped me understand her character even better, but I could see other people reading this and then finding it like very triggering if you do have OCD. But yeah, I think overall this one's gonna be probably like a 2.5 for me, which is unfortunate. I wanted to love this one more than I did.
Boss ass bitch. Boss bitch. Boss ass bitch. Boss bitch.
Hello, good morning. It has been, I don't know, like 24 hours since I last saw you. Last night we ended up making that like tater tot nachos dish again, except this time we ended up using just potatoes instead of the tater tots. Oh my god, it turned out so good, and it's definitely a new favorite recipe for me. Last night I washed my hair, and then it was one of those nights where like I fell asleep with my hood over my head because it was that cold out still. And then this morning I woke up to the sound of like dumping rain, which was like really magical, but I'm so groggy this morning because I had such weird insomnia last night. Like I took a melatonin at like 1:15 in the morning, and then I just laid there for an hour and it wasn't working. Like my brain was still so hardwired and awake. And then I took another melatonin at 2:15 in the morning, and then I think I passed out like very shortly after that. But anyways, I did want to let you know that last night before I went to bed, I did start listening to the audiobook for Home is Where the Bodies Are. And I know I've been like very hesitant to want to read Geneva Rose again. I've almost basically like sworn her off because of how much I really haven't liked some of her stuff. Some people on my Patreon, you know, like some Patreon friends were saying that they actually thought this one was pretty good compared to her other stuff. So I was like, you know what, why not? Like, it's a short audiobook, I'll just give it a go. And so far I'm about 35% of the way into the audio, and I'm actually enjoying the setup of this a lot so far. I don't really know if this one leans more into the like horror genre or if it's more like just mystery thriller, but it's kind of reading more just like mystery thriller so far. We're following these 3 siblings who come from this town called The Grove, and we're primarily following from the daughter Beth, who I think is the oldest daughter. And right at the beginning of this book, their mother is dying and she's literally passing away, and Beth is the only one there to take care of her, and her siblings are like on the way, but her siblings don't make it to the house in time before her mom dies. And then the mom, you know, as she's dying, she literally says out loud to her, she says, "Your father, he didn't disappear, don't trust." And then she just dies, and she has like no idea what the hell her mom meant by that. Then it's interesting because her siblings arrive, and I feel like her and her siblings, they have like a really interesting dynamic so far because they have like not the best relationship with each other. Like, she hasn't really talked to them in like 7 years. And her younger sister Nicole, she is a drug addict, and she's like always asking them for money and like always asking them for help, and it's just like it's really put a burden on their relationship. And then her brother Michael, he's kind of like the only one who like made it out of the town and like became successful, and he's like the one that has like the life that they all seem to envy. Like, I don't know, Beth, you know, like she seems like she had a lot of potential in her life, but she's like wasted her potential, or at least that's how they make it seem, because we do get the perspective of all 3 siblings in the book. So we do get Beth's point of view, we get Michael's point of view, and then we get Nicole's point of view. Then something that's really cool as well is that we do get their mother's point of view in the year 1999. So it kind of like jumps back and forth in time, which I also really like. This book does have that like major 90s vibe, which I do like, because, you know, come on, the cover is like a VHS cover. I was like, this has to have the 90s vibes, right? And so far that's been cool. And like the general premise of this one so far is that they start watching these like home videos when they're like clearing out her house after she died, and then they find this video of their parents doing some like very disturbing shit. And I don't want to say too much more just in case the premise doesn't give too much away about what they find, but that's been very interesting to see, like, you know, what their parents were up to and the secrets that their parents were hiding from them when they were younger. And so that's already creating some like tension between the siblings, you know, because they're trying to figure out what to do with this information they found, because they're like, should we, you know, confess and like let people know what we found, or like would this make them look like they were guilty too? So like they're trying to cover it up maybe. I feel like the tension between the siblings is already so interesting, and so I'm kind of invested in a Geneva Rose. Like, who would have thought? So the plan for today is that I'm just gonna, you know, finish straightening my hair. I'm gonna make a quick breakfast, and then I do have some Patreon reading sprints today. They're gonna be starting in about 50 minutes. So I should be able to finish this book today, like no problem. I'm not worried about it at all, and I can't wait to see where it goes. So I'll have to update you once I'm done.
Last night, I dreamt that I was with you in the sugar blue waters, and your big strong hands, crying out like a baby. Once I knew I was asleep, hoping that just maybe it was real this time. A little rain begins to fall down, wash it away and see what stays around. And round we go now. I lay my eyes that you laying by my side. Radio loud. Yeah, we get.
Hey, hello, it's been about 2 hours. I've been doing some reading sprints on my Patreon, and I just finished listening to Home is Where the Bodies Are by Geneva Rose, and I'm so excited to let you know that I actually enjoyed this one quite a bit. I don't have the best history with Geneva Rose, and in fact, I don't think I've ever given her books anything higher than like 3 stars, maybe even 2 stars, but I'm so glad that I still decided to give this one a chance because I just really ended up liking this one. I think the main reason why this one really worked for me is because this one felt a little bit more serious than her other books, because I feel like in the past I've always found her books to be like kind of silly, and they felt like more heavy on the romance than like the mystery and thrills, whereas like this one, it did have a little bit of romance in this book as well, but it was not nearly as big a part of the story as the other ones, and this one just felt a little bit more serious in tone. It felt a little bit more like a mainstream thriller, if that makes any sense, and I mean that as a compliment. Like, it reads more like the typical kind of mystery thriller that I would pick up and enjoy, and I loved in this book the sibling dynamic dynamics were really interesting. They kind of reminded me of like the siblings from like How to Sell a Haunted House by Grady Hendrix, where like they just have this really toxic dynamic as siblings, and you can tell that there's a lot of history there. But I personally thought it was really interesting, and I really got invested in the story because I thought the siblings, like each character was so well fleshed out. I liked that we got each one of their perspectives because I feel like it helped us get to know them better as characters. I also did like getting their mom's point of view in the past and kind of like getting her perspective and learning more about like how she was involved in certain things that were happening was really interesting. And I think as far as the plot of this book goes, there were some things towards the end of this book that I didn't see them coming. I mean, to be fair, I read this book in like 2 sittings, and so I wasn't like sitting here like theorizing. I mean, I don't think that this book is like super unpredictable. Like I think if you sat there and like really thought about it, you can probably figure this out pretty easily, but I personally didn't see it coming. I had a fun time with it. I feel like the ending was very twisty in a way that I wasn't really expecting it to go. And then I actually like really loved the final chapter in this book, and one of the lines like literally gave me chills when it was read. I was like, oh my god, like that's stunning. Like what a perfect way to end this book. So I am just as shocked as you are that I think I'm gonna give this book 4 stars. Like I really had a good time with it. I think I would actually like recommend this pretty highly just because it was so easy to read too. Like I love a good quick thriller like this that's very fast paced. The chapters are pretty short. I love that the audiobook is only 8.5 hours long. Like it is so easy to get through very quickly in my opinion. It's like one of those like popcorn thrillers that's just very like user friendly, you know, like it's easy to read, easy to get into, fast paced. Like that's everything that I'm looking for in a thriller. So like I had a great time with it. I'm really happy about it actually. Now knowing that Geneva Rose has potential to write a thriller that I could enjoy, like that makes me happy. But anyways, I'm very excited about loving that one. I think next I'm gonna start on the audiobook for The House That Horror Built by Christina Henry, and this is one that I'm also, you know, incredibly excited to read because in the past I have really loved some Christina Henry books. I am kind of nervous though for this one because this one has been getting some really low reviews on Goodreads, I've noticed. I mean, this book just came out in the month of May, so like it is a brand new release and not that many people have read it, but so far it's averaging like a 3.3 on Goodreads, and I'm kind of like, ooh, like that's a little lower than I was thinking it would be. So I'm going into this one and trying to like lower my expectations a little bit just in case. But this one should be interesting to read right after, you know, Home is Where the Bodies Are, because I feel like they kind of have like similar covers or like similar vibes, but like Home is Where the Bodies Are was definitely more of like a mystery thriller, whereas this one, The House That Horror Built, is being pitched as more of a horror book. And I'll give you a synopsis once I know more about what this one's about, but I think I'm gonna start on this one next. I'm still doing some reading sprints on Patreon. I'll probably be here for at least another hour or two, and then maybe this afternoon I'm probably gonna go to the gym. Hello, I wanted to film a quick update because it has been a few hours. I did, you know, the Patreon reading sprint earlier today, and I was able to get so much done today. Like I had such a productive day, not just with reading, but just like getting a bunch of stuff cleared out, like my closet. I put a bunch of clothes that I'm planning on donating in my trunk, and then I also just went to the gym, and I was at the gym for like 40 minutes. It felt so good to get back to the gym. I haven't really been going to the gym ever since I got sick recently, so it feels really good to get back into the swing of things. But I wanted to update you because I got 52% of the way through The House That Horror Built. I was listening to this one on audio pretty much all day while I was like, you know, on Patreon reading sprints. I was cleaning, I was doing things, and then I just was at the gym. And I think I'm really sad to say this and update with this news, but I think that I'm gonna DNF this one. I am not feeling this book. And I'm so sad about it because, you know, Christina Henry is an author that I have loved in the past. Like I really loved Near the Bone. I mean, I know last year she came out with Good Girls Don't Die or whatever that one was called, and I didn't like that one either. That one was actually a DNF for me too. So like I don't know what's going on with the Christina Henry books recently, but like this is so unfortunate. Like I was so excited for this one, especially because this one had the cool like haunted house trope in it, which is something I usually love. And in this story we're following the single mother named Harry, and she gets this job cleaning this house that's like a haunted house kind of. It says she's working in this gothic mansion of a reclusive horror director. So she's working for this movie director named Javier, and it's so cool because in his house he has all of these different things like costumes and and like different things from all the movies that he's worked on. And she's a huge lover of movies, like our main protagonist, Harry. And then Harry also has this like 13-year-old son named Gabe. He is struggling with like ADHD. The weird thing though is that this book takes place during the pandemic, like during COVID, and she kind of talks a lot about how difficult it is for her to like secure this job and how, you know, the kids are finally starting to go back to school and how like weird the new reality is. I think it's so interesting when authors decide to include COVID as like part of the storyline. Like I never know if the reason for that is to make the story feel even more grounded in reality, but I feel like I never really end up loving when COVID ends up like playing a part of the book or when like that ends up happening, because it just feels a little too close to home. Like I don't know, I just don't need to be reading about COVID. So like I don't love the fact that this book is taking place like during the pandemic essentially, and it's talking a lot about like people wearing masks and like trying to get back to a normal life. The horror elements of this story are that Harry, she feels like she's starting to like hear noises in the house, and it's definitely one of those tropes where we're trying to figure out as the reader if we can trust her perspective as like the protagonist. Is she just hearing things? Like is she making shit up, or is it actually real? Like is there something creepy going on here? She starts to hear like noises from behind a locked door, like she thinks that she hears whispering. There's also this thing with like his costumes, like she keeps thinking that the costumes are like moving, and some of it's creepy, but honestly like most of the horror in this book has felt a little bit silly to me so far and like not that scary. I was actually looking up on Goodreads some other reviews from people, and I saw a few people mention that this book kind of reads like a Goosebumps book, and I was like, yes, that's exactly it. Not that Goosebumps is like bad or anything, but it just feels a little bit like juvenile, if that makes sense. So like it definitely feels kind of like Goosebumps, where like the horror elements just don't feel that scary. They feel a little bit more silly, which is just not really the vibe that I was wanting going into this. I also feel like, you know, the fact that I'm like 50% of the way into this book, like halfway through, and I could not give a single fuck about any single character in this book, and I'm finding the writing just in general to be very dull. Like besides a few little like creepy things that are happening here and there, like I could not give a fuck about what's actually going on in this house. I just don't care. I don't care about any of the characters. I'm not connecting with any of them. I feel like Harry as a protagonist, like she's interesting because she likes horror movies and I like her perspective as like a mother, but I also feel like there's just not that much more to her character to make me connect with her in any way. Like I don't know, I just can't get into this, and I just don't see myself wanting to continue with the rest of this book, because if I'm not enjoying it 50% in, then I feel like there's a good chance I'm not going to enjoy the rest either. And the fact that this book has such low reviews on Goodreads, oh, it breaks my heart. It makes me so sad because I just had the highest expectations for this one and I really thought I would love it. But dude, Christina Henry, these last two books from her, I don't know, I can't get into them. It's truly unfortunate when you have an author that you've given 5 stars in the past and then like their new releases, I'm just like DNF, don't care. Especially because since this one had like the haunted house trope, I really thought this one would be one that I would love, but that doesn't seem to be the case, so that's unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. The only book I have left for this video is the new Peter Swanson, and I am so freaking excited. Hello, hi, it's been probably another 24 hours since I last updated you. It has been a busy day. Last night I didn't end up reading anything more because I decided to stay up late editing this other video that I had to work on. And then this morning I went and got lunch with my dad. I went to one of my like favorite local spots in the town that's like an Asian restaurant. It was so freaking good. My dad really loved it too. He kept mentioning how he's like, I need to come back here more. Like he really enjoyed it, so that was great. Then this afternoon I wasn't really doing much, so I decided to go to one of the local coffee shops here because I wanted to get a head start on A Talent for Murder by Peter Swanson. So that's what I've been up to for the last, 2 hours or so. I also just swung by the library because I had to pick up a couple library holds for a video that I'm going to be doing later in June. And so yeah, it's been a busy day, but I have started on A Talent for Murder and I just hit chapter 10, which puts me at about 80 pages in. I don't know why, because I'm trying to read this book physically and for some reason it was taking me a minute to like get into it. And I feel like sometimes that's the case for me when I try to read books physically. Like sometimes my brain, it just like takes a second point for me to get invested. But so far, I am really, really loving this so far. Oh my gosh, this is feeling like typical kind of like Peter Swanson. I just love his style of writing so much. I love the way his characters just immediately feel kind of like shady and mysterious, and you're just kind of wanting to learn more about their lives. So this book is technically the third book in the series, right? Because we have The Kind Worth Killing, we have The Kind Worth Saving, and then this book for some reason is called A Talent for Murder, but it's technically the third book in that series. There are characters from The Kind Worth Killing that are in this story, and so I would personally recommend reading The Kind Worth Killing and The Kind Worth Saving before reading this one, especially like already. There's a little talk at the beginning of this book that I think could be considered a little bit spoilery for what happens in the other books, and because, you know, The Kind Worth Killing and The Kind Worth Saving were both 5-star books for me and some of my all-time favorite thrillers, so of course I would recommend reading those before picking this one up anyway. But like, oh, this has been so interesting so far. So in this story, we're following this character named Martha, and she is a librarian. She is a newlywed because she's recently gotten married to this guy named Alan, but she keeps talking about the fact that she still kind of feels like Alan is almost like a stranger to her, because it hasn't been that long since they've first met. Like, they ended up getting married pretty quickly, and you know, they've only been married for about a year or so, and he's also a salesman, so he travels quite a bit for work, and she feels like she never really knows like what he gets up to. Like, she doesn't really know this man that well, okay? And something that's interesting is that while he's away on this like work trip in Denver, when he comes back home, she notices that there's like a blood stain on one of his shirts, and she's like, oh, that's weird. And then she like reads about online how there was this woman who supposedly you know, committed suicide by like jumping off of her balcony, but then she starts to wonder like, oh, maybe it wasn't suicide, like maybe something else actually happened. And then there's also another report that came out of Denver about this woman who like got a head injury and she was like unconscious, and so she starts to wonder like, oh, what are the chances like maybe my husband was involved with that? Like, her immediate thought is like, oh, was my husband involved with like one of these women? And what's interesting is that the very first chapter of this book, you read from the perspective of this girl Josie, who was the one that supposedly committed suicide by jumping off the balcony, but you read from her perspective is like the first little prologue of the book, and you find out that she is married, but she has an open marriage with her husband, and so while she's in Denver, she hooks up with this guy, and I don't think we ever found out the name of this man, but then the end of this prologue part just says, and that was when she was thrown off the balcony, and you're like, oh fuck, like, oh wait, what? So like, we know as the reader that she hooked up with a man who was not her husband, and then she was thrown off the balcony. So I think it's really interesting that the book started with that scene, because I'm like, oh my god, so was her husband Alan, like, was he the one who like threw her off the balcony? And so she's starting to put the pieces together, like, you know, her husband's gone on a lot of like work trips throughout the year, so she's like making a list of all of his work trips, and then she's looking up like local crimes in those areas to see if there were women that were killed during when her husband was there, and she finds like 5 to 6 different instances where she thinks her husband could have been involved in like harming one of these women because he was there the same weekend that something happened. And so the setup of this book has been super interesting so far, because she's starting to feel like her husband might be a serial killer, or that he might be harming women and she doesn't know about it, so she's starting to get suspicious of him. And then that's where the character Lily comes into the story, because Lily is actually an old friend of Martha's that she used to know back in like college, I think. And it's interesting because Lily, if you know from the other 2 books, Lily is like one of the main characters in The Kind Worth Killing, so that's kind of where it comes into the series of this book. And so she calls her friend Lily just because she wants advice on like how she should go about this situation with her husband, or like she just asks her, you know, like, oh, do you think I'm being crazy, or do you think like I have a right to be suspicious of him? And so Lily's character is just one of my favorites. Like, I really love her character, and I love that in this book we not only get Martha's point of view, but we also do get Lily's point of view as well. I almost kind of wish, I'm not gonna lie, the only nitpick thing I have right now is that each chapter we kind of are going back and forth between Martha and Lily's perspectives, and I kind of wish at the top of the chapter they would just put the name of like which one we're following, because sometimes it'll take me like a paragraph or 2 to like realize like, wait, whose perspective are we reading from right now? So that's my only thing, is that I wish they put at the top of the chapter like whose perspective we're following, if it's Martha's or Lily's. But otherwise, like, this is so great. Like, I'm having so much fun with this. I'm also just really connecting with the characters in general and really connecting to their conversations. Like, I love when Martha, she says to Lily's character, she kind of talks about how her husband feels like a stranger to her, and she says, sometimes I think everyone is a stranger to me, that I'm doomed to never really understand another living soul. And I just really thought that that was interesting. You know, it's thought-provoking. I'm having a fantastic time with this book so far. Like, it's literally giving me 4 or 5-star energy right now. I'm excited about it. I don't really know what my plans are for the rest of the afternoon. I mean, it's only about 4:30 right now, and I'm debating if I want to like pick up tacos on the way home, or if I just want to like make dinner at home. I don't know yet, but honestly, like, I might just sit in my car for a little bit and continue to read this, just because I'm having so much fun with it, and I feel like this is a book that I might be able to finish finish all tonight because it's only about like 250 pages and I'm just so tempted to just sit here and fly through it today because of how much fun it is.
It's not that I can't be alone, but I just don't wanna be tonight. It's not over till it's over, baby. It's not that I can't be alone, but I just don't wanna be tonight. It's not over.
Hello, I am back with the final update for this vlog because I have just finished reading A Talent for Murder. Now, I really hate to come on here and do this, but like, what the fuck was the ending of this book? I'm sorry, what? So the last time that I updated you, I know that I said, oh my god, this is looking to be a 4 or 5 star, like I'm really loving it. And that remained to be the case up until the ending of part 1. So like part 1 of this book ends somewhere around like the 120-ish page mark and we hit part 2. There was a really good plot twist at the end of part 1, you know, like typical Peter Swanson shit. The story kind of changes up a little bit and I'm not gonna lie, part 2 I thought was so incredibly boring. I started reading part 2 like right when I got home and I was just really struggling. Like I was almost thinking like maybe I should just set the book aside and like try to finish it tomorrow because I kept getting distracted by my phone and like every little thing. I just could not pay attention to this book. And I was like, maybe it's a me problem, but honestly, no, I think it is a book problem because the book was just so boring. I feel like my issue with part 2 of this book is that it just starts to get so repetitive. It starts rehashing the same shit over and over and over again. And I'm sorry, but with the whole like private investigator point of view, I feel like something that kind of gets boring to me about the private investigator point of view is it's just like trying to track down different people and trying to like interview these people about this person that they used to know. And it just got so repetitive and so boring. Like I just did not care about what was happening. And so ever since, you know, part 2 of this book at about 120 pages in, I really did not like the whole second half of this book. So much to the point where, you know, while I was in part 2, I was like, okay, this is definitely going down to like a 4 star. But then when we hit part 3, I was like, okay, now it's feeling more like a 3 star. Like I just really didn't like part 3 either. I feel like part 3 just kind of felt like more of the same shit. Like I just didn't care about what was happening with these characters. And then, oh my god, the final nail in the coffin though for me was the final chapter of this book. Like, are you fucking serious? So I think I might actually end up giving this 2 stars, which is crazy. Like this is such a turn of events because I was loving it at the beginning. I was having the time of my life. I was living, laughing, loving. And I thought for sure I would be like a hardcore fan of this entire series because of how much I loved the first 2 books. But like, this was not it. And it's really wild to me because, you know, I keep looking up on Goodreads. I mean, granted, not that many people have read it yet. This only has about 100 ratings on Goodreads because this book technically doesn't publish for a little bit. And Book of the Month had it a little bit early, you know, but most of the people reviewing this book are giving it 4 or 5 stars and everybody seems to be just like absolutely loving it. I even see some people saying that this one's their favorite out of the 3 books and I am so genuinely confused. Like, did I read a different book? Also, this is such a small thing, like such a small little nitpicky thing that probably doesn't really matter, but there was a few editing errors in this book that I caught with my eyeballs. Like, was this book even edited by an editor? I would understand more if I was reading like an ARC copy or an advanced copy of the book, whatever. Like, no, this is the finished copy, like the Book of the Month edition. Why was there so many editing errors? I caught at least 3 times with my eyes. Like, I should have marked it down in the book when I noticed it. It would be like little things, like there would be a word missing and I'd like reread the sentence like 5 times being like, that doesn't make sense. It just needed to be edited. And so like that was a little unusual. And then, oh my god, there was a moment with this one character where I literally wanted to like bash my head into the wall. I was like, there's no way he said that. Because one of the characters is interviewing this guy who his wife died, and then at the very end of the chapter he goes, I wish you would have met her because she was fire. Like, I'm sorry, what? That just sounds like Peter Swanson is like trying to get like the Gen Z lingo or something like that. Like it was so cringy. But like I really don't understand the hype with this one. Like if this is something that people are loving, I just genuinely don't get it. Like I wanted to get it so badly. I feel like as I was continuing to read this book, I was just getting more and more irritated and bored with the storyline. Like I just wanted things to pick up and get more interesting. I just didn't really care about any of the characters that I was reading about in parts 2 and 3. And then also the ending. Like actually, what the heck? I feel like it's one of those endings where you really have to like suspend your disbelief, but it was also like incredibly predictable. Like it was just something that I saw coming from the very beginning, and so I was like, am I supposed to be like surprised or shocked by this ending? Like is this ending supposed to do anything for me? Oh my god, I'm so upset, you know, because as you saw earlier, I was really having a good time with this and I thought this could be a new favorite and I was really excited to read something that I was loving. You know, if you had told me before starting on this vlog that the book that I would enjoy the most in this vlog would be Home is Where the Bodies Are star, I would have laughed in your face. Like, wow, how the tables have turned. A book that I thought that I'd give 5 stars, I gave 2 stars, and then a book I thought that I could give 1 star, I gave 4 stars. This is why you should always check out books that you're not totally sure about, because, you know, anything can happen. Authors that you normally love could disappoint you, but authors that you usually hate could impress you. You know, things happen. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this video. I would love to know if you've read any of the 4 books that I read for this video. I would love to know if you've read them. What do you think of them? Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you very soon with another video. Bye!